Miracle Story, Episode 2. There is much talk today about spiritual intelligence. When I first heard Kris Valloton speak about this, I thought, I want that. But then, almost as quickly, I heard God say, haven't I always given you that? I began to think about that and have remembered many times that I just knew something without there being any way that I could have known it in the natural. My very first memory of such an occurrence was when I was about 12. I remember it was in the summer and I had a wart on the inside of my foot. It was what they call a seed wart that had 3 tiny little black dots that were considered seeds. I hadn't shown anyone the wart. I didn't have the internet to do a search about warts. I didn't know of anyone else having a seed wart. But on that summer day, I remember sitting and looking at that wart. I was sitting on my mom and dad's bed, and the sun was shining in the room. Somehow, I just knew if I pulled out those tiny little black spots, the seeds, that the entire wart would go away. So, I got a needle and went to work on it. I have always been brave like that. I would rather have control over my own pain and hurting myself rather than give the power to someone else. I picked and dug at all 3 of them until they were all gone. Then I went about living the life of a child. I don't know exactly how long it took, but one day I just noticed that the wart was gone. There was no way at that age that I could have known what to do to get rid of that wart. I am sure I was wondering to God, as I have always done. I doubt I even knew at the time that that was prayer. I don't remember hearing a word from God. There was no voice, even internal, that told me to remove the seeds. I just knew what to do and did it, and it worked. We spend the first couple of decades putting great effort into our learning, training, and teaching our brains to hold knowledge. Our emotions are also learning. When a harsh word is spoken, we learn how that feels. We learn what happiness is, and for each of us, that may be something completely different. But our emotions are also learning. What if we also taught our children from the very start to learn to know things from God? I get how that brings questions to mind. How do we do that? How do we teach them to know if it is from God or the enemy? Isn't that rather supernatural? Why, yes, it is supernatural. Godly supernatural. We teach them by teaching them about God, the Bible, and especially supernatural things of the Bible. Teach them who God is. Teach them His character. My suspicion is that God has already fully introduced Himself to them. I believe that children already experience a level of communication with God that is far more spiritual or supernatural than adults do. Nothing has told them that it is not possible. Then gradually, the practicalities of life overshadow the supernatural aspects for them. The memories of those precious encounters with God fade from memory. But what if we help them keep them alive? What if we are dialoguing with them, asking them if they hear God talking to them? If we hear something that causes us to feel uneasy, then we are right there to discuss it with them, keeping them on track. But if we never have that dialogue, then they will never know the difference. And it could be that moment, that conversation, that prevents them from seeking adverse supernatural encounters later as teens or young adults. We are supernatural beings. Let's live that way and encourage our children to do so as well. If we learn early how to thrive in the godly supernatural realm, the enemy will not be able to entice us away to his. Thank you for listening. Be sure and subscribe to this podcast, plus my other podcast, The Story with Nancy Jackson, where you will hear the actual, professionally narrated novel that syncs with after the story. Link is in the notes.